At World Cup time, everyone knows who Just Fontaine is. 13 goals in one World Cup in 1958 is one of those records that will likely never be beaten. Except 14 years later, someone nearly did. The Brazil Independence Cup, nicknamed the minicopa, was as close to a World Cup as you could get. Argentina, an African continent team, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, a Concacaf select side, Czechoslovakia, Ecuador, France, Iran, Ireland, Paraguay, Peru, Portugal, Scotland, Uruguay, USSR, Venezuela and Yugoslavia gathered together for a month-long festival of football across Brazil with a lineup that, bar a couple of major European nations, would have done as a World Cup lineup. It is the favorite memory of football in the long career of a great. Fontaine's 13 goals was matched by this great Dusan Bajevic, who opened his tournament with an incredible 5 goals against Venezuela, following it with a double against Peru, Paraguay and Argentina along with goals against Scotland and Czechoslovakia. In the space of a month, Bajevic had pulled out a scoring feat that had conquered most of South America and etched his name in the history books. But that one crazy month in Brazil is just scratching the surface of Bajevic's incredible career both as player and manager that regularly created controversy and divided opinion. Born in 1948 in Mostar, Bajevic is principally associated with 2 clubs, Velez Mostar and AEK Athens. At Velez, he made his name as a player in 2 spells, and was part of the club's 2 golden ages in the 70s and 80s. At AEK, he spent 4 years as a player before a 10-year spell as manager across 3 spells. His story properly begins in the 1967-68 season under the management of Sulejman Rebac, latterly Yugoslavia manager, who had a dilemma. His Velez side were underperforming and aging, and he could either persevere with the old or turn to the youth side. With relegation paused in that season, due to league expansion, Rebac took the risk and, while Velez disappointed in that season, that short-term pain transformed into a massive long-term gain. Bajevic had been recommended directly to Rebac by his school and Rebac picked him out from there. When Bajevic was turned to, he delivered, scoring twice on his debut versus FK Sarajevo in 1966 and, in 1968, getting more notice after scoring a double in a win over Partizan Belgrade. At the same time as Bajevic came through, Rebac brought in goalkeeper Enver Maric into the squad from the youths too. Both would go on to represent Yugoslavia. Note 1. It took time. It would be another 2 seasons until Velez were even challenging for major honors. Bajevic on Rebac, he was a man who wasn't only a coach but a teacher of life who taught us a lot on how to be gentlemen that would not be forgotten by the people. He had much love which he transcended onto us and which we ourselves tried to transcend onto others, driven by the BMV youth crop of Bajevic, Maric and Vladic. Note 2, Velez would go on to finish 3rd in the 1969-70 season, led by Bajevic winning the top goal scorer award for that season, tied with Slobodan Stanchak, the top scorer in the history of the league. Those 3 didn't just represent a very good year of youth talent, they represented the diversity of Mostar, Bajevic the Serb, Maric the Muslim and Vladic the Croat. There could be no better symbol for the vast ethnic diversity in Yugoslavia getting along than those 3. Individual honors would come their way. Bajevic would be Yugoslav Player of the Year in 1972 driven by his 15 goals for the national team that year, Maric the same in 1973, Velez would bring in more youth and fade slightly before their strongest period in 1972-73 and 73-74. Firstly, they finished second behind Dragan Dazajic's Crvena Zvezda before coming even closer the following season, finishing second to Hajduk on goal difference. Note 3. The following season would be the last gasp of this Velez golden age. 4th in the league, but the real strides were made in the UEFA Cup, knocking out Spartak Moscow, Rapid Vienna and Derby County on their way to the quarter-finals before getting knocked out by eventual runners-up FC Twente. Bajevic himself scored an 86th-minute penalty to win the tie against Derby. After then, the team would start to go their separate ways. Bajevic would depart Velez in 1977 for AEK Athens managed by Zlatko Kajkovski, who brought Bajevic into partner and support Thomas Mavros, the Greek league's all-time top scorer, and it paid off handsomely as Bajevic did the one thing that eluded him at Velez, won the league title. Bajevic would help AEK to the title in this first 2 seasons at the club, with AEK winning a league and cup double in his first season, and then would be top scorer in the league the following season, albeit European progress would be hard to come by, their best result being inflicting Porto's record European loss when managed by Ferenc Puskás in the 78-79 season. Bajevic returned to Velez in 1981 with the club having just earned their first major honor with a Yugoslavian Cup victory the previous season, note 4, but was, at this point, winding down his career, scoring 11 goals in each of the following 2 seasons before taking over as manager in 1983. Bajevic, the manager of Velez, would excel as much as the player did. Similarly, he took a bit of time to get going, recording a mid-table finish in his first 2 seasons at the club before the tumultuous 1985-86 season saw Velez take that great leap forward once more. To understand what made this season, and the following one, so mad, we have to look simply at the last round of fixtures of that 85-86 season. With all games meant to kick off at the same time and almost every game having something riding on it, almost every game was fixed, or, at least, suspected to have been. This included Partizan beat Železničar 4-0 to win the title on goal difference from Crvena Zvezda, note 5. The fixing was, to put it bluntly, really obvious, and the 12 teams involved were docked 6 points for the following season, but then, after the 86-87 season finished, an appeal found that the match-fixing allegations were unfounded. The points were given back after the season had finished and Vardar of Skopje had been crowned champions. To their credit, Vardar at least kept their European Cup spot, but Partizan would be crowned champions of the 86-87 season in the courts and Bajevic's Velez would be second. They would go on to finish third in Bajevic's last season at the club behind the Belgrade clubs. Fortunately, no such foddery applied to the 85-86 Cup, which Velez claimed with a 3-1 victory over Dinamo Zagreb, Bajevic's only trophy from his service at the club either as player or manager. Bajevic had been responsible for both the first and second golden age at the club and, much like in the 70s, it was driven by youth, in note 6. In Europe, the best they managed was a close second-round defeat to Borussia Dortmund in 1987-88. As the Bajevic left, Velez started a decline that has never really been arrested, losing their ground in the war coming from the breakup of Yugoslavia, and currently reside in Bosnia-Herzegovina's second tier. As for Bajevic, he returned to AEK in a bit of a slump. Their last title had been a decade prior, Bajevic's second title, but his impact was immediate, taking AEK to the title in his first season. That was only the beginning. Much like at Velez, Bajevic was the catalyst for a double golden era, one as a player and one as a manager. It took a couple of years to truly get going, but once it did, Bajevic masterminded 3 titles in a row between 1991-92 and 93-94, along with putting together small European runs, 4 appearances in the last 16 of European competitions, beating the likes of Rangers, PSV and Spartak Moscow on the way. What's perhaps most incredible about this sustained period of success is the background it was played out against, with the Yugoslav War, evacuating his family from Mostar, one of the war's most brutal battlegrounds, living with 13 other members of his family and listening out for news about his mother and grandmother, who could not leave Mostar until a year after the rest of his family due to illness. Bajevic lost property and belongings in Mostar and, like many, friendships were made different, in particular that with the Croat member of the BMV, Franjo Vladic, created a team not without friction, and heated discussions were commonplace, but it would be hard to entirely blame Bajevic for this. His problem was rarely with the majority of players but with those with the greatest egos, his most famous fallings out being with Zlatko Zahovic and Rivaldo, and, in both cases, were caused by Bajevic substituting them. But when it came to creating heated discussions, little did more to do that than his managerial move in 1996, choosing to hop across Athens to join Olympiacos. In the face of death threats, he was defiant. "I have done nothing wrong. I will kill anyone who comes near my family." When caught lunching in Athens by AEK fans, they pelted him with food. When Olympiacos played AEK, the projectiles ranged from fruit, to eggs to a moped. Just like at AEK, he immediately ended a title drought and in style, immediately winning 3 titles on the spin before being sacked while Olympiacos sat top thanks to running into Hurricanes Olotko. Note 7, he was not out of work for long, moving to cash-strapped PAOK and winning the Greek Cup in his first full season before doing the unthinkable again, returning to AEK for an 18-month spell that would see him leave AEK to be the first team in the history of the Champions League to draw every single group game. Note 8. Yet he never truly won back over the fan base, and games would often see objects thrown at Bajevic ranging from coffee to chairs. And the fans' torrents of abuse directed at both Bajevic and his wife led Bajevic to walk out of the club in the middle of the first half of a game against Iraklis and, soon enough, back to Olympiacos where he ran into exactly the same problem along with experiencing his issues with Rivaldo and left after one season, in spite of winning a league and cup double. So, you would think, perhaps Bajevic would choose to maybe choose something a little less high-profile or a little less pressured for his next assignment. Instead, he chose Crvena Zvezda. Serbian football is a pressure cooker at the best of times, and Bajevic did not experience that. While it's hard to deny his few months at the club saw some successes, going into the winter break 14 points clear, there were inconsistencies and a spring dip in form saw the Delige turn on him and, after a VCT derby loss to Partizan, that turned ugly as fans put a brick through his car window. 12 days later, with fans chanting for his head as Vojvodina went 2-0 up at the Maracana. Note 9, he walked out on the club in the middle of a game once again. Note 10, with the club still 6 points clear at the summit of the Superliga. He would move back to Greece in 2007, for a season at Aris. Note 11, leaving due to disagreements with the board, but not after delivering some revenge with a 3-0 win in the UEFA Cup. Then, in November 2008, he would return for a third go at AEK for a 2-season spell and immediately struck a conciliatory note with fans. "We can't afford to talk about it, the abuse in his second spell, now though. We all love AEK. We need to forget the good and the bad and look forward." Bajevic helped turn the side around, getting them to 4th in his first season and 2nd in his second season, including a scarcely believable 16-15 penalty shootout loss in the Greek Cup final to Olympiacos before things turned nasty. While many fans could forget about the past and look forward, some couldn't, and, after a friendly game in the run-up to the 2010-11 season, Bajevic was assaulted by fans. While he remained in post, he left a month and a half later, and it's impossible to see this as anything other than a massive factor in that decision. His managerial career would end with 2 cup of coffee stays at Omonia Nicosia and Atromitos, sandwiching a spell assisting the Bosnian FA with reform. He currently is in an executive role at, who else, AEK Athens. His managerial career was driven by professionalism and respect, to be dealt with that by his players and supporters and to do the same in return. From an interview to Politik on taking over at Crvena Zvezda, he was asked what he wanted his players to show. "Seriousness is most important. Team consists of a number of relationships, both from work and character. Attitude towards work, trainers, teammates is important. Each player puts himself in the team, with their perceptions of professional and personal responsibilities. Red Star is one big family. She has to play live and believe in herself as a family. Nobody can make us unbalanced, get out of balance, or veer from our path, and the goal is always simply victory." And when a Newcastle journalist described Bajevic as a great man to a Greek colleague in advance of Atromitos facing the Chorties, he was told this: "A great coach may be, but not a great human being. A great coach is a definite." Bajevic was an early adopter of 4-2-3-1. Looking at every coaching job Bajevic took prior to his last departure from AEK, an immediate positive impact is obvious and his trophy list is testament to that. Bajevic created teams that were rarely flashy but always effective, but did it in a manner that annoyed fans who couldn't see beyond the sometimes scandalous nature of his actions to penetrate the persona of an emotional man, thinking with his own best interests in mind when leaving AEK for Olympiacos but never able to resist the emotional attachment to AEK. To call him not a great human being is probably the perception of most fans who supported his teams, but an extremely unfair conclusion to draw. Instead, Bajevic is best seen as a man who often did the right actions for the wrong reasons or vice versa. It's hard to blame a man who has seen his property in Mostar blown up and had to evacuate his family for taking a high-paying job at Olympiacos. It's hard to blame a genuine club legend for thinking fans would forgive him on his return. It's hard not to sympathize with him eventually growing sick at the insults and more that flew at him from the AEK support. Perhaps his nickname of the Prince is not just for his talent but for also his accused Machiavellian outlook on life. A great player, definitely. A great coach, indisputably. A great man, well, that might be pushing it a little, but few players have as great a story as the man they crowned the Prince. Note 1: as this is about Bajevic, there's not really much to be earned going through the squad of the first golden era at Velez, but the talent assembled, mainly through the youth system, during that period is incredible. Bajevic with 39 caps for Yugoslavia, Franja Vleda 24, Enver Maric 32, Vahid Halilhodžić 15, and a Euro U21 winners medal, Cemal Hadzijabdic 20 caps and Boro Primorac with 14 caps. Although they didn't win major honors at club level together in this era, it's an incredible collection of talent to come through one club over the space of about 5 years and compares favorably with the hit rate of the class of '92. It's also a pretty good collection of coaching talent too. Note 2: W doesn't exist in the alphabet, so it is a direct reference to BMW. Note 3: had it been 3 points for a win, Velez would have been champions, or had it been decided on goals scored, Velez would have won also. Note 4: 3-2 against Železničar. The only season in which the cup would be decided with a final between two Bosnian sides, with Halilhodžić scoring a double in a team driven by Blaž Sliskovic, both who would leave the club that summer. Note 5: Partizan's game actually kicked off 10 minutes later than Zvezda's due to a hurriedly arranged ceremony to celebrate an already retired player. All in all, 12 teams were suspected of playing in a rigged fashion. The title, and the following mess, is still disputed to this day for very obvious reasons. The Partizan game wasn't even the most obviously dodgy. Note 6: notable names this time round included 1986's Yugoslav Player of the Year Smir Tuce, Emperor Nenad Bjegic, Goran Juric, who would be in Croatia's 1998 World Cup bronze medalists, and Seedcat Jazz, who is still associated with Velez. Note 7: never one to miss an opportunity to self-promote. You can read a full biography of Zlatko Zahovic at http://www.thefootballife.co.uk/post/17231407246/Zlatko-Zahovic-a-career. A very interesting story in its own right, detailing the rise and fall of one of football's most abrasive and controversial geniuses. Note 8: in a group with Real Madrid and Roma, no less. 2-2 at the Bernabeu and 1-1 at the Olympico. Note 9: finishing 3-0 with the final goal scored by none other than current Southampton and Serbia winger, Dusan Tadic, with one of his first ever senior goals. Note 10: literally, he genuinely walked straight down the tunnel, out of the ground and drove off, never to come back. Note 11: not to be flippant, but Bajevic's commitment to annoying people is incredible, jumping between Athens clubs and then doing the same between both Thessaloniki clubs as well, in a nation renowned for rowdy fan bases. His managerial career is great, but it sometimes reads like a one-man band. Years post-Aris, he was linked with Panathinaikos but declined it, one of only 2 clubs he could possibly have joined, the other being Partizan. That would have made his life more interesting.